everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer at Geek Vibes Nation, and I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm a reviewer extraordinaire. Nah, Dom Fisher, also Geek Vibes Nation, and this should be a fun one.
Yeah, so we are talking about Scream 6, and I'm really excited. Um, I love this franchise. I'm sure you're the same. Like it has so much like nostalgia for me, like probably the same for you.
Yeah, it's I grew up like since like 3 years old, 4 years old, watching horror films, but Scream was the first one that like I kind of understood what was going on. I think I was probably fourth, fifth grade, somewhere around there, and it's the one that this is mine. Like mom, Child's Play was my uncle, and Nightmare on Elm Street is my mom. This is mine. Scream is mine.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely one of those that I had been a long time horror fan, but it's interesting because like post Scream, I always felt like I had to sort of apologize for being a horror fan. And then like or rather pre-Scream, but then post Scream, it just like it seemed like that was a little bit more mainstream, a little bit more like popularized. Okay.
But yeah,
Um
I think Scream, like you said, with the being mainstream and the way that it's set up, it kind of made horror accessible to a wider audience. It wasn't just like those weirdos who like blood and dark stuff. It was like no, like small town, relatable characters, and loosely based on some true stuff. So it kind of brought everyone together because it wasn't super like it wasn't overdone. It wasn't just like monsters and super gory. It was like I know you don't really mess with this, but like it's not jump scary as much as you think it might be. I can bring you in, and it's and it's weird to say when we talk about these films that it's a good time or it's fun, but I mean it is.
oh yeah. Um yeah, absolutely. And so before I get into my thoughts, I wanted to kick it off to you first. And what are your initial impressions of the film?
I thought when we first saw the trailers drop, and it's like, oh, they're in New York. This is weird. How's this gonna work? Why does Ghostface? Why is he holding a shotgun in the trailer? You're like, what? This is. I don't know what this is. This is new territory. I thought it worked so well. Um, this is one where the city is as much as a character as the characters themselves are. I mean, normally the setting is just a setting, and but the fact that we are in all these different buildings and we're on the subway, we're in a bodega, it creates a better atmosphere. There's the whole overall tone is a little more gritty, and I feel like that when people think of New York, you kind of think of that grittiness and the realness of New York. Um, and the way, I mean, from the first opening like sequence, you're like, oh, like, I've never seen this point of view before, and it just it grabs you and holds on to you really quick, and from then on out, you're like, I don't know where this is going, and there's a vast human element to it because you do like we get a little bit with Sydney, where you're like, yeah, what is it like to deal with this thing on a regular basis? But it's never explored that much because she didn't have a group of friends that were with her to go through with her as much as they do now with Tara and Sam. So just to see how they encompass online culture and just horror film culture in general with it, and this great huge city, and then just the legacy of what the franchise has been and how they're able to keep, mounting more onto the lore, and it works. You think with like a lot of long running franchise, you like eventually you're like, I'm burnt out. This one didn't work. This one, like for especially for being the sixth one, it's my second favorite one now. It works so well. Like for me, it goes Scream 1, Scream 6,
Hmm.
Scream 2, uh 4, 5, and then 3. I wasn't a huge fan of 3. So it falls down the bottom of me, but this one worked on so many levels. It's intense, but it still has the meta humor. But Ghostface is not playing around. I mean, just that image behind you, he it's not a game this time.
Is he
It's not.
behind me?
Yeah, it's not a game. And
Yeah,
that mask looks so good with the like distressed look with all the cracks and stuff. That was great.
yeah. I liked it. I'm a little conflicted. Like, and it's interesting because I wanted to form an opinion in my head before I read any reviews. I like really like next level stayed off of like social media the day before. Because I just kind of wanted to like form my opinion and then like see what other people were also kind of thinking. And it's interesting because it kind of lines up with sort of like the consensus. But yeah, to your points, like absolutely, like I love how New York is shot. Like even in this kind of cleaned up New York, they somehow give it that 70s grindhousey, grimy kind of feel, which I love. Like I appreciate that. Like it felt like, they took like a Bill Lustig or Frank Henenlotter, New York City, and kind of recontextualize it for like newer audiences. I know that sounds super pretentious, but it's a long way of just saying that I like how older filmmakers would really make New York look like a scummy cesspool. And I feel like, these new filmmakers have really kind of done that. The subway scene I want to talk about later on, which I think is like one of the most fucking tense scenes. Like I was gripping my seat. But to your other point, like I like Ghostface is next level crazy in this. Like I think this is kind of the most like this, it sounds so weird to say, but like this is kind of the most active
Yeah,
Ghostface. Like
yeah.
there's these beautiful shots, and this isn't really giving away anything, but like where you actually like see like his like the
Little
I don't know, like
frills or whatnot.
yeah, whatever you call it. Like, but it just like it's such a cool, like it really takes full advantage of like his costume, how fucking menacing it is. Like it really reminds me of like that initial kind of jolt in the first movie, before this film became so commodified. When you see that Ghostface mask for the very first time, like holy shit. And I feel like that kind of I don't think you can ever really recapture that magic, but I feel like this comes the closest.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed like they were kind of paying homage to some of the past films, like that opening sequence, like as different as it is, it is very it's similar to the first Scream. You're blonde on the phone, and
Mhm.
it just it felt good, like, oh, okay, this is familiar. And then when you get that flip, you're like, oh, this is different, this is all right. But no, yeah, I do think that like what you were saying, the first thing with how New York is to me, and I think it works because of Scream doesn't take itself too seriously to the point where human moments don't happen. Like every drama, they for some reason they forget to laugh. But it's like real life, even if someone dies, there's some kind of laughter, whether it's awkward, whether it's trying to find a joyous moment in darkness. but like it reminded me of the vibe of the first Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. It's everything's kind of wet. There's steam coming out of all the sewers, and there's a lot of like these dark alley shots where you're like, New York is dangerous. It could be very, very dangerous. But yeah, I mean, like, so there's one guy that I know. He's the only person that I've seen so far that he doesn't like it, but he's hard to please with everything. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who at least doesn't, um, respect Ghostface in this one to a certain degree because it's like you said, it's unlike anything we've seen. Like active and aggressive, and there's not a whole lot of like I have to hide. It's like no, you have to stop me. Like I may hide behind this door, but I'm gonna talk to you behind this door, and you just have to find a way to stop me. And when that happens, it makes it that much more terrifying because that, like you said, that subway scene, you put yourself in those shoes, and you're like,
Yeah. I mean, as somebody that's like ridden the subway in New York at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., it does get a little weird for sure. Yeah, I also kind of want to like talk about some of the really cool Easter eggs. Like there is a smorgasbord of them because this is set on Halloween. So of course they kind of go nuts with the costumes and stuff. And this is something that isn't a spoiler because this was seen pretty prominently in the trailers. But it was really fun kind of picking out like everybody like someone dressed up like Samara Weaving's character from Ready or Not, which was awesome. I mean, you had Freddy, Jason in there. Well, was Freddy in there? I can't remember, but I know there was Jason, Pinhead.
see some Pennywise.
Yes, yep. And yeah, I mean, I'm such a dork. I'm like somebody that like I would love to figure out how they logistically did that because those are so many IPs that you have to
I
clear.
was thinking the same thing. I was like, did they just make phone calls? Like, hey, look, we're want to celebrate you, so like, can you just like let it slide this time, or do you just, hey, look, we're just gonna throw a couple thousand at you, and we're just gonna use it for a couple seconds.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's interesting because I had heard that they were unable to clear the Michael Myers likeness and that wasn't going to be in the film, but then I clocked it very easily, so
Yeah,
maybe they resolved that or something, or maybe that was some misinformation. But yeah, I think it's like just a larger point. I feel like I like how this movie gives you very overt references, but then like there's some really deep cuts. Like I don't think this is a spoiler. Like this has nothing to do with the plot, but I know before we were recording I was telling you about one of my favorite Easter eggs, which is the costume from Murder Party showing up pretty prominently by one of the main characters. And it's like that attention to detail that I was like so fucking excited. Like it like I when I saw that I like lit up. It was just so cool. So yeah, I one of my other positives about this film, and I'll get into some of the things that I thought maybe the film struggles with a little bit, but the chemistry of the cast is fantastic. Like that group of actors really are the glue, I think, that kind of hold this movie together. What do you think?
no, for sure, and I don't know if it's because like they're all legitimately rising to fame at the same time. So it's not like, of course, Jenna Ortega has since Wednesday has been like the it girl, but like they've all been in a lot of different movies around the same time. They're all really, really close in age. So I feel like that them trying to in real life balance this new stardom along with this big movie is kind of the reason why they do mesh so well. And I think that they've all just kind of, you can tell there was a level of comfortability. They've come into their own. Um, like, I mean, I love Jasmine Savoy Brown. Like,
Hmm.
she's my favorite character. Um, like even the last one, I just love the fast rattling off of like all the meta. Like, this is what happens in this horror movie. This is the sequel to the requel. So all stakes are off, and legacy characters can die. And you're like, yeah, okay. So this is that's when it really starts setting the motion. Like, this is gonna be really big. Is when she speaks, you realize like how big the film potentially is gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I think this is something this franchise as a whole does really well. And I think that is you have likable characters that make the stakes so incredibly high. Like you love these characters, you follow these characters, even the characters that are fairly new from the last film, like they're so likable. Holy shit. Like nothing bad happened to them, please, ever.
Yeah, I mean,
Um
hell, the last one, Jack Quaid has gotten so big from the boys, and I'm like, yeah, Jack's in there, and he like, oh no, Jack, what's just say it ain't so, man. What are you
yeah.
doing?
That is a nice I really did like that subversion because he is such a likable guy and he usually plays pretty likable. I mean, his character in The Boys is maybe has shades of maybe being a little sinister, but like overall, he's the nice kind of
Yeah,
almost
he's
almost
the boy next door.
yeah, like he's almost like a POV character.
Yeah,
So I like how they really like flip the script. I mean, that's kind of what I loved about Get Out. Like there's a lot of things I love about that movie, but like they take the most likable white characters in history and they make them the fucking worst. Like so I'm trying to think about like some of the sequences that I thought were really good. And again, something that like I mean the train sequence was really well done, well executed, tense as hell. There's another one that I don't maybe want to mention spoilery, but it was like I think I know you probably know what I'm talking about. The
yeah,
escape scene. Yeah.
yeah. I do think that and which we all know that Kirby's back.
Hmm.
I think her being back helped add a level of tension because we know where Kirby is an adult now. We know what she's been through, and then but you don't know why she's there. Like from the outside looking in, before you see, you're like, why is Kirby in here? What is she gonna add to this thing? So of course you're thinking, like when you watch Law and Order, when you have somebody that's a guest star, oh, they must be doing some dirt. And I think that's what this movie does really well, is it keeps you guessing. Like it kind of has that who done it vibe because everybody has a potential motive, whether it's big or small. So you're like, well, that makes sense. That also makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then of course in the back of your mind, you're like, is anybody else possibly gonna come back? And what is what's the big reveal gonna be? So you're constantly like, I don't know. Maybe it's them. Yeah, it's them. No, it's not because they were just together. Who, you know what I mean? So I love that feeling of like not knowing.
Yeah. And I wanted to really quick touch on, and again, I'll do we can do this in really broad strokes because of like keeping this spoiler free, but I loved how like each movie kind of has a thesis, right? Like what's, the overall kind of statement or message. I mean, it's not really a message film, but like what they're trying to kind of convey. And I
Yeah.
kind of love how the template for this is internet conspiracy and true crime obsession. And I like how that is something pretty topical that is easily kind of translated into this franchise. just kind of how like last movie was toxic fandom, and then the movie before that was like reboots. There's always an interesting kind of thing to tie everything together. What did you think of that? Did you think that was kind of a cool layer to add to this?
Yeah, because it shows you, because we see it on, in our own cities and states, we all see some of that stuff play out on a small scale, but it just kind of shows you like where it could go if enough people feel a certain type of way about a certain thing, and you're like, oh, that's terrifying. You can wake up one day and be public enemy number one, and you're like, what did I do? What
Yeah.
did I say? What did I tweet?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting kind of um like I said, template to kind of give the movie like some depth. And yeah, like I think I love like broad strokes. I kind of like how we get more depth with Tara's character, especially her relationship with Sam. That dynamic has a really nice arc. Um, and I think that's maybe, I mean, outside of like Ghostface being an absolute fucking badass in this and the kills being awesome, I think like giving you another layer is that really great drama and sister dynamic that I think is just like it adds richness to the film. Like it gives you something to, it gives it a little more meat than just like, I mean, listen, I love slashers that are just like body count, whatever.
Right.
But this franchise is always kind of aimed for something a little bit more. But at the same time, it's kind of it never isn't just like a fun ride, but it always gives you that like weighty drama to kind of give you a little bit of an extra kick. So I think that was really well done. I think like technically the movie's well shot. Again, like you were saying, like New York is a real character in this. That's fantastic. So I want to get into a couple things that I didn't like, and it wasn't enough to like ruin the movie for me. But I will say the last maybe 10-15 minutes were my least favorite. Um, because okay, so again, I will not we're not going to reveal who the killer is. We're not going to reveal any major plot points. So I'm going to try to choose my words really carefully. I think that thinking about it, and also keep in mind that like I just saw this last night, so I'm still thinking about it, processing it. If y'all like this video and you want like a spoiler review later on, we can do that. Chime in the comments. But um I I think that it's maybe not my least favorite reveal. That would be Roman, but
Right.
it's kind of up there, and it almost feels like not as well thought out. Um, and they're also teasing the shit out of me with Stu.
Yeah.
So in broad strokes, what did you think of the finale? What did you think of like the reveal?
Yeah, I mean, the idea that, and the way that it came together, I like. It did kind of like, okay, so before that, before it leads to that, I had a lot of questions of like, how I put it. I just felt like there was some things that were too convenient, and I was wondering like, do y'all not realize that I can see that is the way this plays out is weird in certain instances, and I was like, I don't know. Like, for me, without giving away anything, it's in the park with the van. There was parts of it I was just like, this is something doesn't add up the way that it should, and maybe it was like someone just missed something and they were missing some details. But when it does get to the reveal, it was a little bit of once it gets close to that point, you're like, oh, I kind of now saw some of that coming. Um, and it went on longer than I thought it should have.
Hmm.
It was a little long. That sequence was a little long. But yeah, the stew thing, see, I've seen so many different theories, and for those who don't know, and I recently watched and was reading about stew, and I was telling Kanan I had like a theory on some stuff for the possible next one, but originally, when the first three movies were pitched as a group, they were going to bring Stu back for the third
Hmm.
film, and he was just going to be disfigured. And then, of course, we all saw a third one, and it was a completely different movie. So, there's all these theories been floating around that, could Stu come back? And I don't know what they want to do, if this is going to be something going forward. I know Matthew Lillard is like, put me in, coach.
Yeah.
Um, and but it has to make sense. And so we'll let everybody else, decide whether or not that return could make sense. I have a theory, but yeah, that final reveal sequence, it just went on long for me. That was my biggest beef with it. I was like, it should have taken that long, and how much can the human body take
Yeah.
all around? I mean,
Yeah, like I know exactly what you mean. And again, to be vague, there are certain characters where you're like, how are they still walking? Like again, keeping it very ambiguous. I also want to say really quick, one thing I didn't like is they had such a beautiful character arc for Gail at the end of last movie, where it was like, okay, you know what? Like if you take her trajectory from the first film to the fifth film, like they have like especially her relationship with Sid, they have such a beautiful arc where it's like they go from, Sydney like punching her almost every movie to like, they're actually like teamed up in the fifth film, and they're like really having these heartfelt moments of like, Gail's like, I'm sorry I wrote that book about your mother. I feel responsible for this. And, she's like, no, I don't blame you. This wasn't your fault. And they just had that like closure that I
yeah,
thought was great. But then they kind of, and again, I'm going to be very vague, but I will just say that I don't like how they kind of regressed her character back
yeah,
to almost starting position.
yeah.
And
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
yeah,
That's
like and it's not like it's not like she's not completely redeemed by the end, but like I just wish they would have kept that beautiful kind of arc intact. And I don't understand, like it's like it's conflict that's not really necessary to sort of further the narrative. So I don't kind of understand why. Like there's one scene in particular, again, I'm going to be really vague, where I feel like if they would have cut it out, or at least maybe retooled it a little bit, it would have not made her almost feel like she regressed again. So that's all I'll say. I will say that even though I don't really love the ending, thinking back on it, it did like there was a lot of puzzle pieces that it kind of does fit together. So I don't feel like it was like haphazardly thrown in. Like I think, like I said, Roman's my least favorite
right.
Ghostface, and there's I really think it would have been fun if they would have played up the fact that there's this theory that there was two killers in the third film. Do you recall she was the actress that was playing Sydney and she won the role or whatever? She was actually meant to be the second Ghostface. And
Ah,
what's interesting is on the official website, they give everybody who died, all the victims. She's missing from that purposely.
Huh.
And they again, keeping it spoiler free, they do mention Roman and not having an accomplice. But I always thought it'd be really interesting if they could have like maybe been like, maybe he did have somebody to kind of, but yeah, back to Stu. I feel like I feel like they're almost afraid to do it, like of because of fan backlash, but like originally Scream 3, as you were saying, was supposed to have Stu come back. He was supposed to be leading a cult of multiple ghost faces. Now, if you want to see what that would actually be like, you can, because Kevin Williamson retooled that into his show, The Following or The Followers or something. Do you recall that one with Kevin Bacon?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like that was kind of like his Scream 3 script retooled into that show. But yeah, and I always kind of thought if you're gonna honor Wes and like what he wanted, it's literally what he wanted for the third to round
Yeah.
out that trilogy. So I think it's interesting because they do talk about Stu, not a lot, but like I feel like they're baiting fans a little bit. Uh
Yeah, that's a possibility. Because I do think that so in my review I had put that this kind of feels like it almost it like even though it is deeply connected, it almost feels like a standalone. I think this is this film where it like says, "Hey, this is a whole new thing." Like we knew five is very new because it's you know, this requel, but this one was like we're solidifying that this is a kind of a new-ish, you know, universe per se. So maybe if we get another one, this will be its own trilogy.
mm,
And with you saying that about how Stu is leading the cult, I can just foresee it being called Scream Seven, you know, the cult of Ghostface or something like that, and then we get kind of this, you know, Power Rangers crossover with all the generations coming together, and they can make of that what they want to, but that'd be interesting though.
yeah, I think there's a way to bring him back that would be really interesting. And honestly, I kind of wish they would have that kind of would have been the how what they did in this film. Because when I like
Oh, he can be instead of Q, it's Stu. He runs like some 4chan, 8chan hateful shit online, and then
yeah.
we've seen how this stuff plays out.
Well, no, that's a really interesting point because you know, in 5 and 6, you know, there's an online presence that's kind of um bringing these events into being. So you could
Yeah, and
almost,
there's a line at the beginning of the movie that gets glossed over, and I think it gets said twice. Um, and something's getting made, and it has to be finished, and they gloss over it, and then it never really gets talked about again.
mm,
So maybe that's something that would add to the next storyline.
yeah, I mean, and I think like that's a really interesting like idea, and I think that would be a good way that you could like tie in the machinations of the last two movies with something that's like somebody pulling the strings a little bit, and that could be Stu. I mean, again, it's really interesting because again, I'm going to be vague about it, but they do mention Stu a few times. They do kind of talk about where he is, whether or not he's actually dead. I don't think that's spoiling any
Nah.
big plot points, but like um you know, I think that if you make him a like the puppet master of some of these events, um, that would be really awesome. I do want to mention, like, before we wrap, one of my favorite scenes is Mindy and Kirby having their moment of
Oh yeah.
um horror fandom. It's like a couple minutes. Again, this isn't like a plot point, but like seeing them together, like interacting,
Yeah.
sharing their like love of horror movies and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That mutual respect was great.
Yeah, she's, like game recognized game, right?
Yeah.
um so before we wrap, like was there any final thoughts or anything that you wanted to mention but haven't yet?
When we're talking about the Easter egg, I didn't see it. But my friend Jen, I believe she saw it. She said when they passed one of the theaters, I believe it's had Jason Takes Manhattan was playing on one of the
Oh,
theaters.
nice.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I didn't see it. But no, this one is definitely one that it's gonna be one of those multiple watch type of screen films. I think most of them are, but there's those ones that the excitement is so high in the film that you want to keep watching it, and that's how I felt as the credits rolled. I was like, oh yeah, I want another one right now.
Yeah.
It could have been 20, 30 minutes longer. I've been fine. But no, I mean, it's a lot of fun. Stay for the post credit scene.
Yeah.
Um, at this point, like I tell a lot of people that if I go somewhere with somebody, they're always like, "Why you stay for the credits?" For one, I just want to give respect to all the people who made the film because I know that shit is hard and it takes months. But of course, a lot of times, especially nowadays, there's a treat at the end, whether it's something that ties into another film or just some kind of Ferris Bueller type of thing, but it always is fun to get a little treat after the credits roll.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I cheat a little bit. I will always Google whether or not something has a post credit scene or not. But yeah, so this one does. It's not huge, but it is fun. It's worth staying for. And as you said, yeah, it is good to like acknowledge those people that worked really hard. Um, thankless job, a lot of these people, but there wouldn't be a movie without them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess if I had to wrap up some final thoughts, I thought it was fun. I thought I still think I like the last one a little bit more, but it's still pretty ranked up there with like some of my favorites. As far as like kills and how awesome Ghostface is, this is like top tier for me. So if y'all are Ghostface fans, holy shit, you're in for a treat. So yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Dom, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to me.
Of course, of
We're
course.
like the horror people, so we gotta,
Yeah.
you know. We also recently did a review for Megan a while back. I'll link that in the description if you all want to check that out. And like some of our
Yeah, because
other
now
reviews.
since it's on now
Yeah.
since Megan is on Peacock, people it's more attainable for you to go see it. The new one is unrated. It's a minute shorter for some reason,
Hmm.
but the kills are a little you get to really see it. It went from PG-13 to unrated, so
I haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna make that a point over the weekend, but like if y'all want, like we can always update a review with some with the unrated cut. Again, if you want that, chime in on in the video and let us know. And yeah, as always, thanks for hanging out with us.
we good, yeah.